That's a much more declarative way of stating what your intent is, and the former is much more of an imperative way of stating your intent, right? The bottom one gives the engineer a whole lot more flexibility. The top one doesn't give that much flexibility to the engineer because you're like, it's not loosely coupled, right? So the advantage of that is this is extremely repeatable, right? So I could just say, here's what I want, this is my intent. So you no longer have to keep thinking in terms of individual servers. You start thinking in terms of CPU and what my application will require, and describe your requirements in a much more declarative way and not have to worry so much about how that actually gets materialized. And that makes a huge amount of impact to developers' productivity itself. So if it's a static application environment, it just means the deployment is that much more reliable, right? There's no stress around updates, and there's no stress around the whole deployment process itself. And if it's repeatable and it's runnable, then it's portable, right? Everything that we have done, we have released open source. Kubernetes is open source completely, right? You could technically take Kubernetes and run it on a local data center if you wanted it. And we have different companies out there which have pledged portability support. Microsoft has pledged, IBM has pledged support for it, and so on. So target is that once this gets more and more mature, and right, you could just basically pick any cloud you want and just push that. And obviously, we would like you to push to our cloud because we think it's perhaps one of the better ones. But the idea here is portability, right? So all the stuff is open source, so you can just go ahead and spin up a Kubernetes and manage a local infrastructure if you like, or you can push them out onto the cloud as well if you like. So you should care because being loosely coupled means it's easier to build and manage. There's a whole host of things advantages that you can get from basically decomposing your application or your entire infrastructure into a bunch of different microservices which you can scale up and demand as required. I have one customer here in Taiwan who basically has a single instance type, and no matter what layer of their service, they just scale it out as identically sized instances of that particular type. So when there is homogeneity in your resource pool, then things become that much easier to manage. Right? The minute you have specialized variations here and there, you start creating snowflakes, and then that becomes much, much harder to manage. Right? So that makes it so much easier, and at the same time, it allows you to bring in and extend with third-party services as well. So let's take a look at the containers in the Google Cloud Platform. So I said there's a scheduler portion, and then there is a Node Container Manager and a Managed Space OS, right? So let's first look at those two at the bottom first. So how it manifests on the Google Compute Cloud Platform today is that we basically ship a container-optimized VM image, right? And it has everything that is required to maintain that standardized declarative container manifest, and all of the stuff around the health monitoring and the restarts of the container, etc., are just pre-packaged there for you. Right? So I just showed you how you could go ahead and create a compute engine instance from the console. You can do the same thing from the command line. So now what we're going to do is to go ahead and spin up one which is container optimized. So how do you do that? So we run that same command. So instead of last time when I showed you the command line, I did gcloud compute instances list to get a list of all of my instances. This time what I'm going to do is to say gcloud compute instances create whatever is my virtual machine name, and I supply to that a manifest file, right? So maybe I'll just move here. So this is the command line command to create a compute engine instance. So I say gcloud compute instances create. That's my virtual machine name. And then I say where I want it, what is the type of that machine, and then I say point it to an image. So we ship container optimized images, and so you just point to that particular image, and I'll demonstrate this in a second. And the more interesting bit is that you can basically also specify a manifest file, and this is one example of the manifest file here. And that manifest file basically tells that particular command what is the Docker image that you're trying to deploy, right? So here is a version, so that's my container. I'm just going to give it a name, and that's my image that I'm deploying. And these are the ports that I'm saying. So it's basically host port is 8080, which is being mapped to the container port at 80. So I declare that in a manifest and just pass that straight in at my creation instance, and automatically create a VM that is container optimized, and then go ahead and deploy that right from the command line for you. Right? So let me see. Let's just go ahead and create that right now. Where's my console? Be okay. Is it okay if I don't use the microphone when I'm doing the demos? Sure. No, you don't have to. Is it okay? I can shout really loud. Thank you. That just makes my life a little easier. Let's go ahead. Share. Is that clear in the back? Can you see it? Yeah. So I can do, first thing I want to do is to figure out where my container optimized images are, right? So for that I do pcloud compute images listed. So if I just run that command, it shows all of the images listed. Well, I got to do one more like pcloud images So here are all the container optimized VMs that we have. So there's different builds of it, right? So we have multiple different operating systems, and then we have a project, which is called Google Container Project. We're actually exposing the container that we have, container optimized. The simplest thing that you can do is do pcloud compute instances create. Let's say simple. That's the name of the instance, and I can say zone is Asia East 1B, so that's the zone in which I want to instance to spin up. Then I can do machine type. I can say N1 standard 1. Maybe I don't know if that's the default anyway, so I don't need to specify that. See the screen with something else. So I'll do minus images. Image. I forgot the. Right, so I just take back there. See, that's my image. So I can say image project. that will be Google containers. So I'm saying use that image to boot up, and that's the project in which that image is actually found. Right? So all I'm saying is gcloud instances create. That's a simple demo. That's the name of my instance. Minus minus zone is the zone in which I want the instance to spin up. What is the image to use? And where is the project in which that image is actually found? So far so good? Yeah. So if I just hit enter over here, what that is going to do is to go ahead and use the APIs and provision a machine for me, spin that machine up, and that machine is going to basically run our container optimized virtual machine. And let's just give it a couple of seconds over there. But notice in this particular case, I didn't specify a manifest at all. Right? So it's just going to be a raw image that comes in. And so that's up and running. So if I go back to my console over here, back to my console here. So if I go back to my console, go back here, I should see a new instance here, simple demo. Okay? So that's the command I executed from the command line, and it's gone off and spun off a machine for me on that. So anything I can do from the web console, I can do from the command line as well. Right? So if I go back to my machine here, I can now SSH to the machine. So I can say gcloud SSH, let's do simple demo. Right, so now I'm going to go ahead and SSH straight into that machine. So it's the machine is actually Asia East 1. So I'm now on that machine. So as you can see, I'm clear out of Chakran and a simple demo. And if I do sudo docker yes, I got nothing running right now. But I'm in the Docker phase. Right, so I can do whatever, everything else is just regular old Docker from now on. Pulling images, putting it in there, whatever you want to do is all plain old-fashioned Docker. Right? Now, I also said you can specify a manifest, right? So let's go ahead and do that.